Wilkerson, and you are participating in a workshop about interviewing. So let's get to it. So my name is Philip Wilkerson. I work at George Mason University as a career counselor, or as we say, industry advisor. I work particularly with students interested in media, arts, design, sports, and rec. What industry advisor means is I work with both employers and students. On the employer side, I make sure that they're coming to campus, posting jobs, and trying to actively recruit Mason students. On the student side, I make sure that they're prepared to work with those employers, such as reviewing resumes, cover letters, interview skills, anything you name it, LinkedIn. If you like to follow up with me, you can follow me on Twitter. My name is Philip_Wilkerson or W3. So you can see that on Twitter. I love to help, and we'll get into the bulk of this presentation. So the agenda is a couple things. How do you prepare for an interview? The 8 must-have skills for showcasing your skills. Handling behavioral interview questions. What you should ask and what questions you should ask the interviewer, as well as what to do after the interview. So just naturally, here's some things that you normally would take place for an interview or interview trends. So there's a lot of screening questionnaires before they interview. Soft skill assessments, they might give you some case studies or some problems during an interview. Job auditions, they might give you an actual run through, or part of the interview process will be participating hands-on for a day, kind of like a shadowing. There's very casual interviews, which is what normally a lot of people do, come in and talk to a few staff members. Virtual reality, you'll be very surprised with technology how people can participate in interviews in a virtual reality realm. And then video interviews. During this time of COVID-19, as you know, a lot of things have been moved on to remote platforms. So being prepared for video interviews as opposed to in-person interviews is a new, well, not new, but growing trend. And so you have to just be prepared to conduct interviews not face-to-face, but via video. So some tips for video interviewing. Make sure that you have good lighting and sound. Test your equipment. Stage your background. So just make sure that wherever you are, there's no distractions in the background, whether that is going to a isolated room or maybe making sure that you have the background covered. I have, for my home office, I have a drape that covers the background so that it's not distracting what's behind me. Eliminate distractions. Distractions could be family and friends. Make sure you go to a private room. No noise. If you have pets, make sure that you're in a different room than your pets, but just to be able to be present. And then test the technology. Always have a test and make sure that you're able to participate with the video call, but always have that backup in case technology fails, as having a phone or the phone number to call in case your internet goes out or other problems may arise. So those are some ideas for video interview. Interview threads. So most often we'll see that phone interviews are very common. It's actually the most common. A lot of times there is going to be multi-layered interviews where you will need to do maybe a phone interview before you have an in-person interview. Or in this case, you may have to do a phone interview before you have a face-to-face virtual interview. So being comfortable preparing for an interview via phone is really important. Some tips I like to tell people that work over the phone is to make sure that you have your notes in front of you, maybe have a copy of your resume in front of you, so that when you're going through the phone interview, you can look at your notes and be able to talk about yourself with confidence. It's kind of hard to talk about yourself off the top of your head without any paper to reference. So I would encourage you that if you're going to participate in a virtual interview or phone interview, maybe have a piece of paper and a pen to take notes, and have a copy of your own resume so that you can pull from your own experiences to be prepared. Maybe make sure that interview processes vary from employer to department. Certain industries have different styles of interview. As I said earlier, some interview industries want you to actually give you a test run and want to see what you can do during the interview. Some interviews have an actual, not mock interview, but have a role play. You might have to do a role play during the interview. For instance, I work in a career counseling office, and so during my interview, we had, in front of the whole staff, I had to do a role play where one of my now colleagues pretended that they were a student, and I was helping them, and I had to act like I was helping that student. And then some interview processes, which you'll be familiar with, will have a presentation portion where you'll have to actually present on a topic, have a PowerPoint, and present to the staff. So all kind of interviews differ between departments and industries. And then behavioral interview questions. Behavioral interview questions mean that there are questions where they ask how you reacted, what did you do in the past. Behavioral interviewing is good for employers because what it means is they can examine your past behavior as an indicator of how you will address certain situations if they were to arise in the future. So they use scenarios and cases or examples of what you've done in the past and how you handle situations in the past. That gives an employer a chance to see how you would address certain issues if they were to come up in the future. So what should you do before an interview? And this is some key things. Research. Never go into an interview not knowing anything about your employer. Look them up. Look at the library. Look at Google. Look at LinkedIn. Look at their own personal website. Do your due diligence to research the employer. Look at Glassdoor. So these are all different resources that you can do to do your research before you go and meet with the employer. Get some statistics, maybe their demographics, how many employers they have, who are the typical clients, what are the typical issues that organization addresses. So do your due diligence, maybe take some notes, and know a little bit about your employer before you interview with them. You never know how many times I've been in an interview where the interviewer did not know of the basic events that organization conducts, or just who are certain roles and who are the bosses and things like that. So all that information is out there on the internet. So before you go into an interview, it'd be really advantageous to do a little bit of due diligence and do some research. Also, find some reasons that you're a good fit. So what I would see is, you see right here is some bullet points of some examples. So I would encourage everyone, if you see a job description, print out a hard copy of that job description, highlight the keywords that stand out to you of things that you did, and look for concrete examples of when you have exhibited those things in your life. For instance, this is a job requirement. They just say blanketed statements like team-oriented, presentation skills, Microsoft Excel. So then think about, you look on your examples, think of a time where you had to be in a team and write that down on a piece of paper. Think about a time where you had to present to other people and write that down on a piece of paper. Or think about the times you actually used Microsoft Excel. And so as you can see, some of the concrete examples do not need to be jobs. For Microsoft Excel, as you can see in this example, the person used a time when they worked, where they used a budget in Excel for their sorority, or a presentation, or a group project. So think about concrete examples in your life, whether it's a real job, a part-time job, volunteering, where you have had to use those skills in your job, and then put that into action. So here are the 8 must-have skills. And so take a screenshot. Leadership, global intercultural fluency, oral written communication, problem-solving skills, professionalism, teamwork and collaboration, career management, and IT applications. Now, these sound like very blanketed statements, so I'm going to break it down individually how you can make those applicable to you, even at your level in high school. So leadership, clubs and organizations, or captains. When have you taken a role where you are in charge or leading other people? And as I said, it doesn't necessarily always have to be a job. It could be a club, it could be an organization, it could be something that you're doing in your life. Global intercultural fluency, thinking about just how you work with different types of people. Northern Virginia is probably one of the most diverse areas in the country. And so just bringing that understanding of all the different students and other people you work with and how you interact with your classmates, your teachers, and just think about how you respect the differences in culture that we have. Oral and written communication, as it says, your ability to speak well and your ability to write well. And that can be exhibited through your papers that you write for school, your classes, or maybe doing a presentation in class, how you are able to do a little bit of public speaking and speaking in front of groups of people. Problem solving, critical thinking. Think about a time in your life where you had a real problem. Take the employer through the steps that you've taken to address that problem and make a solution. Professionalism, that's simply accountability, showing up on time, being reliable, strong work ethic, being accountable. Those are just things that exhibit professionalism regardless. Teamwork, we don't work in isolation. Think about the times where you had to work with other people. Career management, I would say for your level, thinking about having career goals beyond high school and how you navigate and plan for those. And then IT applications. When in your life have you used software or technology? And it doesn't necessarily, it could be Instagram, that's social media. It could be Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Times where you had to use software and show those employers that you can do so. So here are some of the examples that you can see. Tell me a time when you had to persuade others. Can you share with us a time you worked on a team and it was successful? Tell me a time where you had to adapt to a different perspective or environment. These are universal questions, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, when you think of the problems and the times you exhibited these things, they don't necessarily always have to be at a job. They could be at a club. They could be volunteering. It could be in your personal life with family and friends. So think about how you address those problems in your normal day-to-day life. And storytelling. Just think about when you go to an interview, I tell everyone, just be a really good storyteller. Take the employer through a story. Show them that you can do things in your personal life. Interviews are nothing but stories, saying back in my past, I did X, Y, and Z, and this is how my example of when I did X, Y, and Z is applicable to you right now as an employer. And so they just want to see that you're a good storyteller. You're able to take us through scenarios and really exhibit that you have the things in your past that are relevant to that employer. How to effectively answer behavioral interview questions. Look for the trigger words, use the STAR method, and then keep it simple. Keep it under 2 minutes. Do not ramble. Be very concrete and concise in your answers. So trigger word, just make sure that you bring a scenario back to where you were in that situation. Like, even if you're in a team, what role and what part did you actually play? Bring it down to the individual level to show that no matter what, that you had an active involvement in that scenario. STAR method. So STAR method is a typical method that you'll use to go through any interview question or a lot of interview questions. So you'll describe the situation, what was the actual situation, the task, what was the problem you occurred, the task that you did, the actions, what actual actions did you take, and results, what happened. Now, think about this. Not every scenario that you go through the STAR method is going to have a successful outcome. Sometimes, even after you go through a scenario in STAR, you still fail. What the interviewer wants to know, that even if the result is a failure or the result is not a positive outcome, think about what did you learn. So you can even take a scenario and take the results and flip it, even in a failure, and say, because of this failure, I won't do X, Y, and Z again, or I learned X, Y, and Z from that I'll apply to the next situation. So every scenario that you bring in the STAR method does not need to have a positive outcome. What you need to do is take it and flip it and see how you can learn and what you can do to grow. But if you do have a good scenario where the result is a positive one, you need to be concrete with what was positive. Results, numbers speak. So if you did a fundraiser and the result was a certain amount of money, let the employer know the actual tangible money that was raised. Or if you address the problem and because of that, there's a new policy or a new procedure and people do it a new way because of that, let them know that because of how you address it, the result is that you started a new trend. So always finish every story with the result. What was the outcome? What was the impact of that? And then the most feared interview questions. Tell me about yourself. So broad. So I usually tell people to condense to tell me about yourself. Just say your name, what you're interested in, maybe one career goal, one accomplishment, and then one reason why you like the company that you're applying for. Your greatest weakness question. Don't sit in your failure or weakness. Say, address what your weakness is, and show the employer what are you doing to fix that weakness, whether that is studying or getting better. So for instance, my weakness is time management, but I don't just say I'm bad at time management. I tell the employer, because I know I'm bad at time management, I have to use my planner. I had to write things down. And so I'm showing the employer that I'm actively working on my weakness. And then where you want to be 10 years from now, we don't know exactly where we're going to be, but just give a couple estimates of what you like to do and what you're doing toward those goals in 10 years. As we know, life changes, and what you say you're going to do in 10 years could be totally different. But they just want to see that you've thought about your future and you have some steps that you're taking right now to work toward that. So day to interview, just make sure you dress nice. These are just some examples. Nice suit, shirt and tie, professional wear, looking good, feeling good. And then some things to think about. Always arrive early. Always account for, especially in this area, account for traffic. Do not wait to the last minute and say, okay, I need to be there at 9:30. I'm going to leave my house right to be there at 9:30. Always predict that traffic is going to be bad, so leave early and get there early. Always be nice to the receptionist or whoever welcomes you to the interview. And then the interview starts the moment you pull into the parking lot. So I usually tell people, sit in your car before you get in, get hyped, speak to yourself in the mirror, even go in the bathroom, pep yourself up, get really into that mode, be confident, and as soon as you walk through those doors of the interview, you're on. Make yourself, present yourself. Nonverbal communication. Only 13% of our interview is actual words. So what you'll need to do is just make sure that your body language shows. Stand upright, look engaged, look enthusiastic. And if you're tired, drink some coffee. There's so many times where in an interview, I've seen that the person, based on their body language, was going through the motions. They weren't enthusiastic. They didn't really want the position. So your body language, your nonverbal communication, your tone of voice is very important. And then just make sure you ask some questions. Ask for what's the role looking like? What does success look like? Here's some examples of questions. And then after the interview, make sure if you have business cards, leave some business cards, send a follow-up message or email, and also just prepare to negotiate.